With the best brand of football in Idaho, this is the 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. It is season 3 of the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. Hard to believe it, but here we are. Hi, everyone. Welcome into our season 3 debut. My name is Brandon Baney, but of course, the 8-man expert you all came to listen to tonight is our great 8-man correspondent, Will Hoenike, and the co-captain of this show. Will, how's it going? Welcome back.
I'm glad to be back, glad to be ready to go for another season, but I'm just making it up as we go along. That's why we had to go get another expert for this year.
That's right. Little surprise for all of our loyal viewers and listeners. Before we bring in our correspondent that's going to be joining us this season, just as a refresher, maybe 8-man football fans are stumbling upon this for the first time. This is the Idaho 8-man Prepcast. Week in, week out, we are talking about the greatest game there is, 8-man football in the state of Idaho, and that's it. None of that 11-man stuff. So we're going to be here every week throughout the season, breaking down the biggest stories, the biggest matchups, the biggest performances week in, week out. Of course, we would love to hear from you, the fans. If there's a story or an athlete or a team you want us to spotlight, you can send me an email, brandon@IdahoSports.com, and we'll make sure we talk about it. There's a couple different ways you can get this podcast every week. You can watch the video version of it at the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page. You can also listen to this podcast on IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, you'll see a little tab that says Prepcasts. From there, there's a drop-down menu, and then you click on 8-Man Prepcast. Or you can download and subscribe to this podcast wherever you download podcasts, Google, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. Well, Will, I thought you and me is nice, but a trio is so much better. Actually, the person I'm about to introduce approached us and said, hey, I've got some free time now. I'd love to maybe hop on the show and talk about some 8-man football. This is a luminary in the 8-man football world in Idaho. It is recently retired Carey Panthers head football coach, Lane Kirkland. Lane, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you.
Hey, this is going to be fun. I'm excited to join you guys and talk about 8-man football until I die. I appreciate being able to be part of this tonight and this season.
I like this setup, Coach. I've got a ceiling fan back here, and you've got football helmets and pictures and stuff.
Yeah, you can't let it go too far away.
That's right. Yeah, tell us a little bit. So you retired from coaching the varsity football team at Carey. How long did you coach there, Lane?
I was here in Carey for 22 seasons and a year at Oakley way back in the day. It's a good long run, lots of fun, and I just felt it was time to step away and do something different, accomplished a lot of great things and felt satisfied and time to kick back and relax. And it certainly has been one of those kick back and relax summers.
Yeah, and of course, you took over for your dad, who also coached at Carey for how long?
He was there for 19 seasons, so that'd be 41 years of Kirkland's on this sideline, which was a great privilege in our community to be able to serve there and to help a lot of youth and provide a lot of entertainment over the years.
A lot of entertainment, a lot of wins, a lot of good young men that came through the hallways there at Carey High School under the Kirkland family. And now, for the first time in 41 years, a new general, not named Kirkland, leading the Carey Panthers. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Also wanted to mention the fact that while you may be done with the varsity game for now, you've still got your toes in the coaching pool. You're staying busy, right, Lane?
Yep, still busy. I still do junior high football. I had some practices this week, getting that crew ready and prepping them for the varsity level. I've been doing that for 23 years now as well, and also started a cross-country team this year. See if we can get some runners developed for that sport and track and field.
Yeah, well, we know Carey's got some really good sprinters. I think of Riley Morey immediately from the track. So, yeah, distance program, cross country, junior high football. Yeah, you are busier than ever. So we appreciate you squeezing us in every week here on the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast. Will, we're really going to have to step up our game because Lane's forgotten more about 8-Man football than we'll ever know.
Oh, yeah, and I'm going to defer to him. When he says, no, you're wrong, I'm just going to say, you're probably right, Coach. I probably am wrong.
I'll fake it like the rest of you. We'll have fun.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing in this line of work, right? You got your BS meter's got to be pretty high. So, well, let's dive into it. We actually had some opening week 0 8-man games. In the past, there was only a handful of games statewide in week 0. Last week, we had 20 across the state, 11-man, 8-man. So it seems like week 0 is getting more and more populated. But specifically, we had a couple of 8-man contests. And Will, most notably, up north in the North Star League, they started right out of the gate with conference games. So you had Mullen St. Regis taking on Clark Fork. They've been kind of the two big powers the last couple of years. You also had Wallace facing Kootenai. So right out of the gates, Mullen St. Regis defeats Clark Fork 20-6. And I think both teams walked away from that game thinking, boy, we could have done better.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. I know from talking to Stetson Spooner, the head coach at Mullen St. Regis after the game, he said, yeah, we left some stuff out there, but we also saw some stuff that we can build on and some areas where we can improve. And, that's I say this somewhat tongue in cheek. That's the joy of the first couple of weeks in any sport, whether it be it basketball, be it volleyball, be it whatever. You're trying to get your timing down. You're trying to figure out your substitution patterns. You're trying to fill some holes. And I know that Clark Fork played without a couple of its regulars in that game, which I'm sure impacted the outcome of that quite a bit. And not to mention, Mullen stopped him on 4th down inside the 10-yard line a couple of times in a 2-touchdown game. So it was a pretty interesting contest, and it'll be interesting to see because those teams play twice. It'll be interesting to see what adjustments are made when they play each other again.
Yeah, it was the coaching debut for Pat Young, the new head coach up at Clark Fork. He is a former Clark Fork player and graduate, so it's great to see him returning to his alma mater. And yeah, you mentioned it. Clark Fork came up empty twice in the red zone in a 2-score loss, and so the rematch should be really exciting. John Pruitt's going to be the main guy for Mullen St. Regis in the backfield this year, senior running back. But it was in the receiving game. He caught touchdown passes of 52 and 53 yards from a freshman, Connor Lewis. I guess, Mullen St. Regis just got done with a 4-year starter at quarterback. And now they're like, okay, well, we'll just have another 4-year starter in Connor Lewis, Will.
Yeah, it's nice when you have that guy and you can really work with him over a period of time. Coach, I know you've gone that route with some younger quarterbacks, and it can really pay dividends down the road. They get a lot of game reps, a lot of game experience, and it worked pretty well with Caleb Ball. Pretty good, wound up being a pretty good ball player for him.
Yeah, he's now playing at, I believe, Montana Western in Dillon. So, Coach Kirkland, I wanted to ask you about week 0. Some coaches like to have a game right out of the chutes because it gets them a little earlier practice time, but there's also a lot of rust you got to knock off. What are your thoughts on trying to schedule the game so early in the season, that week 0?
That's quick. Honestly, that's really quick. I'm sure there was a ton of rust to get off, but now they can start polishing and shining in those spots they need to. But that'll help them later on, as long as they stayed healthy. And they should be able to get pretty darn good by the midseason and finish strong by starting so early right now. Well, good for them. Yeah,
and I think the reason, especially the North Star teams, do it is because they have 8 conference games because they play everybody twice, and then they have the option to pick up a non-conference game if they want to for 9. And if you start week 0, then you can build a bye week in somewhere in the middle of the year, which definitely helps out. Let's talk about the other game where we talked about a freshman quarterback for Mullen St. Regis. Well, Wallace has got freshmen like everywhere. They've got 10 freshmen on the varsity team this year, and they played pretty well. They defeat Kootenai in their first game of the year, 54-14. Jackson Pierce, 2 rushing touchdowns. He's a freshman. Reese Williams, rushing touchdown. He's a freshman. Henry Larson started the game at quarterback. He's a freshman. The one guy who's not a freshman is the guy I'm most excited to see this year, Julian Davis. He's a 6'2", 200-pound, just physical specimen at tight end. He caught a touchdown. He had 2 receiving touchdowns, also scored on a reverse. Coach Kirkland, when you've got a 6'2" matchup nightmare in 8-man football, how difficult is that to scheme against?
I think if he's a great leader, which I'm sure he is, those freshmen will follow him and give him 100% all year long, and it'll be a great season for their team and for their coach, because they can follow that kind of leadership and a big dude. They're hard to control. They're hard to handle. He'll have to give it to the other dudes once in a while, but I'm sure they'll do well behind that guy.
Yeah, and they're just trying to find as many ways to get him the ball as they can, Will, and he's also a great defensive player. So Julian Davis is maybe a name 8-man fans aren't aware of yet, but he's definitely a guy I would keep an eye on. What were your takeaways from this Wallace win over Kootenai?
Well, I mean, you hit the one. It's Wallace is a young team, and when you're trying to catch up with Mullen St. Regis and Clark Fork, who've kind of run that North Star League for the past several years, a chance to build a nucleus and bring it up is going to help a lot. And I know they're really excited about Reese Williams' potential, particularly on defense, as a guy setting that edge on at defensive end. And then you let those kids grow together. And like Coach, like you mentioned, you have a couple of older leaders that show kids the right way to do things. I think there's some good days ahead for Wallace. And for Kootenai, and I don't want this to sound patronizing, I'm just glad to see him on the field. This is a very small school that they have a good football history. When you go back, 10, 20, 30 years, they've done some great things. They've just had a hard time with numbers lately, and I really like seeing them on the field. I know they definitely got a couple of keepers on that roster, and I just really hope they're able to stick with it and keep building and get back to where they were in the past.
Yeah, when we look at the preseason coaches poll for the North Star League, Mullen St. Regis was picked 1, Clark Fork 2, Wallace 3, Lakeside 4, Kootenai 5. Lakeside was the one team that didn't play in the opening week. They'll get their season started this weekend, Will, and you had a chance to talk to their new head football coach, Coach Buell.
Yeah, former defensive coordinator Jeremy Buell. He just basically sort of swapped spots with Tyler Petty, last year's head coach, who's now an assistant coach. And he likes his group. They've got about 16, 17 kids out there. They've got some good talent returning, and they've got a shot to make a little noise there. They've got some good athletes. We definitely see it in other sports. They've got a great basketball program, but with kids like Quincy Hall, Jarius Moffitt, Julian Moffitt, they've got some kids that are going to make some plays.
Yeah, Lakeside's always got athletes, it seems like. So it'll be interesting to see how the Knights do as they get ready for their season debut this weekend. Let's stay in the 1A D2 classification, where we'll swing over down to District 3. Horseshoe Bend played Wilder, and the Mustangs come away with a 54-8 victory. Carson Drake looked great. 4 touchdown passes to Galen Jones, 57, 53, 50, and 21 yards. Only a 21-yard connection. They ran the ball well. They played extremely well defensively. But on the other side of the coin, Will, if you just look at the score, it's a little deceptive. You were actually at this game, and Wilder had to overcome some adversity.
Yeah, they're a little shorthanded. Their starting quarterback, Kevin Gephardt, was injured last year, and he's still not 100% cleared to go. So they played with a backup quarterback, which, an 8-man gets pulled from another part of the field. So you're filling one hole sometimes by punching another. And, Horseshoe Bend was good. I mean, their lines, offensively and defensively, they just dominated the line of scrimmage. And Julian Neary, the quarterback for Wilder, was running for his life from the word go. Kalen Jones and Trey Bauer, the two primary offensive playmakers for Horseshoe Bend, I thought that Craig Elliott, the head coach, did a really good job moving them around, mixing things up, line them up in the slot, line them wide, line them in the backfield. And just he exploited matchups. He and his staff exploited matchups really well, and then the kids made plays. That's a good football team.
Yeah, and I guess before we dove into the District 3 talk, I should mention this week on the schedule up in the North Star League, you've got Kootenai at Clark Fork, another league game there. Mullen St. Regis is going to host Superior High School from Montana. That game's going to be in St. Regis on the Montana side of the pass, and then Logos is taking on Lakeside in their season debut. So, Lane, let me ask you, when you've got an injury to your quarterback and you've got to move a kid from this position and then this kid's got to move here and you're moving all these chess pieces around, how many moves are you planning for, in terms of swapping guys around to get a new QB in there?
Well, Will hit it right on the head there. You're going to make another hole likely somewhere else on the other side of the ball because your quarterback's probably tackling guys too on defense. So it disrupts things. if you've done it right, guys can step in and fill those positions. You may have to streamline your calls a little bit differently, appropriately to his arm and his running strength. But other guys will step up and fill in generally, and you hope the best that new quarterback can step in there and do some good work.
What in your career, was there a time where you like literally moved 7 guys around or just to fill an injury slot? Like, what's the craziest time you had?
We've had injuries before. I know one time we had 5 starters out after a Lighthouse game, and then we had to play Dietrich, and we pulled that one off at home with 5 seniors out the next week. That's probably the craziest we experienced, but kids did step up. We got it done, and the horses just kept pulling the plow.
Yeah, the horses kept pulling the plow. I think that might be the title of the episode. That's good. I always try to come up with a snappy.
Let's go.
I like it. Okay, so overall in this long pin conference, Council comes in as the defending champions. They were picked second in our preseason coaches poll. Garden Valley was picked first, Tri-Valley third, Horseshoe Bend 4, Salmon River 5, and then Cascade 6. And so to me, Will, it's almost like tiers. The top tier is Garden Valley and Council, I think. Then a tier below that is Tri-Valley, Horseshoe Bend, and then a tier below that is Salmon River and Cascade, just trying to build up numbers. What did you think about the Wolverines being number 1 in our preseason coaches poll?
I think that they could almost be a reversal of fortune last year. Their defense was outstanding last year, and this year I think they're going to put a lot of points on the board. I think they've got some tremendous players on offense and some great experience returning. I think they're going to be a hard team to stop. And I'll say this, if people are thinking Horseshoe Bend is finishing 4th in that league, that's an elite league because that's a good football team. And, that Tri-Valley team, they're on the way up. It's a good group that's been together. I think they do have a chance to make some noise, but I think they're going to have to overtake someone. I don't know that anyone's sliding back. I think that they're going to have to force their way up into that top 3. And I think you hit the nail on the head with Salmon River and Cascade. I think they're teams that they're building. Salmon River there in Riggins, they're one of those small D2 schools that they're kind of isolated. It's not like they can cherry pick kids from a nearby 4A school or anything like that. So them and Cascade are still building, but I expect them both to be more competitive this year than they were last year.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about, Lane. It wasn't that long ago that Salmon River was like Carey. They were kind of the premier 8-man power. They were winning lots of championships. They sent a guy to the NFL, Leighton Vander Esch. What are your memories just watching Salmon River over the years?
Anytime they played in the championship, they won, which is amazing, except for 06 when we started rolling early on. That I stopped by there on my way up to Moscow this summer at the school to coach the All-State game, and bumped into the coach. The kids were there. They were going to have a throw around that night and hit the weight room. We checked that out. That was really cool. But, they work as hard as anybody else, and they have pride. And but he said there was about 10 players is all on their squad this year, but they were there working just like anybody else, and that's what makes 8-man football fun.
Yeah, it's we hope to see Salmon River and Cascade both getting back up to where they've been in the past. The schedule this week for the Long Pin Conference: Idaho City is at Cascade. Raft River travels to Tri-Valley. We'll see what the Titans are made of. A lot of coaches seem to be high on them. They've got a speedster in the backfield, Clayton Harper. Garden Valley is going to travel to Dietrich. That's going to be a really fun non-conference game. Hagerman is at Horseshoe Bend, and Salmon River travels up to Lewis County. And then we've got a game on IdahoSports.com, gentlemen. 8-man football this Friday night. It's going to be the game of the night. Council, the defending champs from District 3, make that trip up north to take on the juggernaut that is Kendrick. Lane, what do you do against an historically dominant team like the Tigers?
You prepare all year long, and you just start to gear up for that and get your kids motivated and look for anything. Ty Cope's going to be hard to handle. That kid just makes things happen. No matter what you try, if you key on him a bunch, he's just going to make things happen. But Kendrick does have it going on. Certainly do, and gained a lot of confidence. Also winning state basketball, I believe it was. So I think they're going to be pretty hard to stop there. But compliments to them for rolling. But I think Council will give them a game. It's time for them to step up as well. So we'll see what happens.
Where does this Kendrick team rank with some of the juggernauts that you've seen over the years? We've talked about Carey. We've talked about Salmon River. I'm just wondering, from a historical perspective, what are we witnessing with this Kendrick team?
I think the same caliber as we've had teams before, as Lighthouse has had teams in the past, as Salmon River has had teams in the past. They get on a run. They got these players coming now. I think all those guys are seniors. And as long as they stay humble and hungry, and I'm sure that they have, and they're working hard, which I really know they have, they're going to be pretty darn hard to stop. But it's way up there for sure.
Yeah. So Council at Kendrick Friday night on IdahoSports.com. Council brings back some talented players. The younger Wade Vining is going to be an anchor on both sides of the ball. Of course, Council lost that 6-0 quarterfinal game to Castleford last year in a foot of snow. Neither team could move the ball at all. Basically, a fumble near the goal line allowed Castleford to punch it in for an easy score. And that was pretty much it for the Lumberjacks. So, well, up north in District 2 of the White Pine League, all the coaches know the score. Monty Madrell, the Lewis County coach, said it best. The real drama is going to be who takes second, who gets that second spot.
It could be any of them. I mean, that's the thing that's wild about it is I think a lot of people rightfully are looking at that Lewis County team. That's a good team coming back. Coach Madrell has done a nice job, and he's got a good group there. But, Timberline, they don't have a lot of numbers, but what they have is good. Ryland West, one of the better 1A Division II players in all of Idaho, and you probably haven't heard much of him. And then you go to the fourth team in that division, Deary, and the instinct is to kind of write them off. Oh, they were 1-7 last year. They were awful. They were awful. They were awful. Look at some of those games. They played in a lot of very competitive football games where, Coach, this better than anybody. A tipped pass doesn't get tipped, or a fumbled ball doesn't get fumbled, or a penalty doesn't get called. And all of a sudden you're talking about a whole different game. And they've got a good group of kids back too. So at this point, I'm putting Kendrick in Inc. They're going to be, 2A in that 1A Division II playoff bracket. But as far as who is B coming out of that, it could be any of them. It really could.
Yeah, our coaches poll was Lewis County 2, Deary 3, Timberline 4. I know Timberline is debuting a freshman quarterback who's about 6'2", and I think they're kind of hoping he might be the next Ty Kett of the White Pine
It's
League.
another Christofferson kid. It's one of the coach's sons. He's the youngest one, and Pat, the head coach, said, when you got two older brothers, you learn to be tough real quick. So, you got a tough young man stepping in there. He's got a great running back behind him. He's got a pretty good line in front of him. We'll say it a lot, and Coach, we talked about this offline this week. You stay healthy, you give yourself a fighting chance. If you have some injuries, it's who adjusts the best.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out. So Kendrick is hosting Council. Salmon River travels to Lewis County. We talked about Deary will travel to Troy to play a 1A D1 school, and Timberline will play up at Lapway this week as well. Let's go to your neck of the woods, Lane. District 4, the Sawtooth Conference, where Dietrich won the league last year. They got all the way to the state championship game, nearly won the darn thing. It was one of the best games of the year, lost to Kendrick at the very end. And then they said goodbye to a lot of talented players, including Cody Power, who's just, a nightmare for opposing coaches. But the cupboard isn't totally bare. Connor Perkins is going to make the move from wide receiver to quarterback. And they've still got Brody Torgerson. They've got some good linemen. What do you think about Dietrich's chances this year, Lane?
Dietrich's got some tradition going. They're proud of that, and they're working hard. I know that Brody Estelle do a great job there with that crew. Got to work with him a little bit in the Shrine game and such, but I think they'll continue to play at a high level. I think they demand that there, and they'll get it. I think they'll play good, clean football this year. But we'll see how they fare against Camas, who's got a lot of seniors. That'll be a challenge for them this year.
Yeah, well, this is a Camas County team that's bringing back a lot of talented ball handlers, both offensively and defensively. That really, I think, was the most impressive thing about the Mushers a year ago, was so many takeaways on defense, and they bring back a lot of those guys.
Yeah, the one they lost, Cody Smith, the senior, he was kind of the the captain takeaway on defense, but his cousins, are still there. Emmett Pallen's still there. I mean, you still got a lot of kids who are going to do damage, and they're going to be a tough team to beat up there in Fairfield. And I think Coach was right on with Dietrich. They still got some good players there, and they got tradition. There's something to be said for expecting to win versus hoping to win. And I think when Dietrich puts on the pads and the helmets, they go out there expecting to win.
Our preseason coaches poll had Dietrich 1, Camas County 2, Hagerman 3, Castleford 4, Hanson 5, Shoshone 6. So last year, the top 3 was Dietrich, Camas, and Castleford. Castleford actually took second. They infamously, or famously, I should say, had 12 players. They called themselves the Dirty Dozen, and 8 of those 12 graduated, Lane. So that means 4 guys coming back from last year. Coach Brian Lowry's going to have to hit the hallways, find some guys to play.
He already has. I'm sure he's probably been over to Buell to buy some guys in there. He'll do his best there at Castleford, and he's always smiling no matter what, and they'll work just as hard as anybody else.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to me, Will, to see what Castleford is able to put together, because the 4 guys they have coming back aren't, slouches. They're good players. You just got to be able to find some pieces to go around them.
Yeah, Jaime Ramos, I think one of the better players in the conference for any team, and is there going to be enough help for him? I think that's going to be the question, because he'll hold up his end of the bargain, and if they can find enough support, if they can find enough blocking, if they can find the linebackers and the defensive line where teams aren't specifically able to scheme him out, he's a good player, and they've got a chance. They do. And
then Hagerman, to me, picked 3rd in the poll. They had more players than Castleford did last year, and they bring back a lot more players than Castleford does. It wasn't that long ago that Hagerman was a player on the state level. Will, you were kind of high on the Pirates last year and saw the potential, and now all those guys are back for what Hagerman fans are hoping is a playoff push.
Yeah, and a lot of coaches around that region there kind of did the little, hey, keep your eye on that team over there, because they have a lot of kids back. Kai Kendall's a kid that we called his name several times last year. He had a number of big games for them. And when you're bringing a lot of kids back with a lot of experience, the next thing for them is to figure out how to win games. And if the talent can catch up, if the I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this where it makes the most sense, but the talent is there, I guess, is what I'm saying. So when the mentality matches that and they start winning some games, it could take off and they could be a tough team to beat.
How difficult is that as the coach, Lane, to take a team where it's younger players, sophomores and juniors, people aren't expecting much, and you're able to kind of come in and be the David? Now it flips and you're the Goliath and people have expectations now. How do you manage those as a coach?
Well, I think Will is right there. As soon as they figure out the mentality process of winning games, I think they'll be very good. And I think they're taking that step forward. I think they had some success last year. They have big kids there. I know that there's a couple sophomores on that team that were completely dominant during junior high years, and those guys are going to roll through, and they're big dudes, and they hit the weight room. I think they use that place a lot, and are proud of it. So I anticipate some good things happening there if they can make the right call and keep the kids motivated and get some commitment, a little bit higher commitment level. They should do really well.
Yeah, Hagerman's got so many kids. They're actually moving up to 1A D1 next year. Kendrick is moving up as well, and Carey, I believe, Lane, right? They're moving back down to 1A D2.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that'll be interesting to see all the changes that happen for the next 2-year cycle starting.
Sure,
in
Dietrich and Camas and some of those schools are just thrilled to have you guys back, Coach.
Yeah, they already called and said, well, we'll schedule you right now. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's been fun to play up a level. Honestly, a great challenge for Carey to play up a level, and very entertaining. And you had to step up your level of coaching as well. But yeah, changes.
Yeah, you guys held your own last year. Great epic semifinal with Oakley. You guys were right there in it. And really, I think a lot of people thought maybe that could have been the championship matchup, but semifinal, and is what it is. So we'll wrap up our last conference here at the 1A D2 level. It's District 5 and 6, the Rocky Mountain Conference. Well, this conference almost doubled in size. Last year, all we had was Rockland, North Gem, and Water Springs. This year, we've added Mackey and Clark County back into the fold. This is exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it adds a lot of intrigue to the league where, North Gem looking to bounce back after being a little bit down last year. Rockland has some really nice pieces with Teague Matthews and his teammates there. They should be able to put some points on the board. But when you look, for instance, at Mackey, that's a team where they had they co-opted with Chalice last year, and a few of Chalice's better players were actually Mackey kids. So now those kids will be wearing the red and white of Mackey and playing under the Miners banner once again. So it's going to be really interesting to see how quickly that ball starts to roll in Mackey. And then Water Springs having to replace Drew Plocker, who was just a phenomenal player on the college football roster down at Arizona Christian. That young man could get it done in all aspects of the game. How they replace him, I think, is going to be really interesting. Are they going to have is one player going to step forward, or are they going to have to do kind of a, death by 1,000 paper cuts and have 5 or 6 different kids step up and contribute in different ways? But I think at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to North Gem and Rockland again. And then the rest of those teams are going to be fighting to get up into that top 2.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover this week between District 4 and Districts 5 and 6. The matchups, Shoshone is going to play the Murtaugh JV. That's really the one game that isn't a crossover. You've got North Gem traveling to Castle Ford. You've got Water Springs traveling to Hanson. You've got Ridgefield traveling to Mackey. And the big game is Camas County at Rockland. This is going to be 2 teams that have high playoff expectations meeting
really
up in a week 1. Yeah, it's going to be a
really
fantastic battle. So last year, Rockland had Teague Matthews, the 6'5", just all-world talent out at wide receiver. And a couple games into the season, they moved him to quarterback. And things really took off. Rockland had been scuffling a little bit. They moved him to quarterback. It added a new dynamic to the offense. Lane, how common is that where you get into, a couple games into the season and you go, it's just not working. Let's take our best athlete and put him at quarterback and see what happens.
I think it's more common than we think. I know one year my dad had a guy at center, and the next season when he was a senior, he was quarterback. He's just talented. Good with the ball, smart, and that's what you need back there. And if that's the guy, you put him back there and let him run your team. And Teague Matthews is one of those kind of guys to make things happen as a great leader with the Bulldogs.
And so we may see him play both again this year. We won't know until we actually see Rockland take the field, but they seem to have some really good athletes. Big question with them always is, can they get enough linemen to buy enough time for all those great skill players? And North Gem, there's no mystery about what they're going to do. They're going to line up and run the ball 50 times.
Yeah, they're just going to, when it was Bridger Hatch, it was, snap and just let him pick a hole and run. And it's a little more balanced now they've got some good running backs there. And so it's going to be a little bit more, streamlined of an offense, if you will. But it's, head coach Corey Hatch, that's what he does. He's not shy about it. Like, some coaches are super protective. They don't want you to know what their personnel is, what they're doing. They don't want anybody to know anything. You could call him right now and he'd probably tell you the first 5 plays he's going to run. And then he'll say, now it's up to you to stop him. And that's how much faith he has in his kids and his game plan. And they execute it well.
Yeah, you've got to like the confidence there from Coach Hatch, Lane.
Yeah, it was fun to watch Bridger play and to coach against him. He killed us quite a few times. I think he had 250 yards against us, and we knew we needed to key on him. And he was just a dude. And it takes a lot of guts as a coach to be disciplined enough to keep giving that ball to your best player over and over again. But that's how you can win games as well. Your best player needs to have the ball in his hands. And if North Gem believes in that, then the kids do, and they roll with it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what North Gem can do this year. And, of course, it'll all hinge on that game with Rockland towards the end of the season. So that's kind of what's happening at the 1A D2 landscape. There's a lot of really good teams. Obviously, Kendrick is still kind of the favorite, but, everyone's going to be lined up like you're going to hit the piñata, and Kendrick's going to get their best effort every single week. So it's going to be fun to watch that as the season progresses. Let's go to the 1A D1 ranks on our season preview. And we're going to start in the Snake River Conference because it's like the Pac-12, the Conference of Champions. All the champions seem to come from there. Oakley has been on some sort of run, Lane, these last couple of years, and they've got enough pieces to pull it off again. This is a really talented Hornets team and a good coach in Brendan Jones.
Correct. And a lot of depth, and great tradition coming. And those kids get a lot of reps in the JV program and a lot of reps in the varsity program. And Coach Jones demands that out of them. I think the other coaches do as well. And that makes a good football team. It makes a disciplined football team. Getting the job done in practice transfers over to the game. And the kids respond well to that. And I expect them to do well again with the Cranny kid running around. He's hard to manage. He does a great job in the secondary. I know he picked us a lot. But he's a smart kid. And there's a lot of others to go with him. So I think the Hornets are going to continue their run here. Jones won't give them a choice, and I think they'll do well.
Yeah, I don't know how often you can say that you have an all-state running back / linebacker in Ethan Torbow who graduates as a senior, and the guy you're essentially going to replace him with was an all-state running back and linebacker the year before that in Bryce Severe coming back from injury. I mean, that's when you know you got some depth, when you're swapping out all-state guys all over the field. And Coach, you're right. I mean, that Oakley team, they got it humming right now. They've got good numbers. They've got good depth. The ability to play JV games, I don't think that can be minimized, because you get experience for those younger kids that you don't necessarily get without JV games. Prepares you long-term down the road, and Oakley's able to do that. And I expect them to be playing well into November again this year.
Yeah, I was at the semifinals and championship last year in Holt Arena, and I was down on the Oakley sideline doing some sideline reporting for the championship. And I look over, and they've got 3 ball boys that are about 4th, 5th grade, and the last names Cranny and Bingham and Beck. Yeah. And it's like these families. Yeah, I know, right? Shocking. So the factory continues there at Oakley. The big question
Coach,
is,
do you have any more Simpsons coming?
Oh, in a little while.
Okay. I was going to say, you've had a Simpson running the ball for about the last 38 years in a row.
Yeah, there's 2 coming, but it'll be 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Yep.
That's everybody else's window. Okay. This is your chance. And then when the Simpsons come, it's all over. So Oakley is the favorite. The question is going to be, who takes second? And we got some wild answers. We ask every coach to confidentially kind of pick how they think the conference is going to shake out. And then that's how we form our preseason coaches polls. And I saw, I think 5 different teams, be listed in that second position. Officially, Lighthouse Christian and Raft River tie for second. Carey picked 4th, Murtaugh 5th, Valley 6, Glens Ferry 7. The top 5 teams all got to the playoffs last year. Murtaugh and Lighthouse had to play each other in the first round, which kind of stunk. But what do you think, Will? If you had to pick one, who's the team outside of Oakley you're keeping an eye on?
I would lean towards Raft River and Carey just because of the history aspect to them. Again, programs that know how to win. They've been through the fights before, and they've come out clean on the other side. But with that said, Murtaugh seems to be that team that perennially is just kind of knocking on the door. They're right there. They're close. And I really like what Lighthouse Christian is able to do, spreading you out and throwing the ball around with Jack DeYoung and Justice Schrader. You got some good players on that side that's going to make life miserable for some defensive coordinators down in the Twin Falls area.
So I asked Will to pick one team. He proceeded to list all of them. Lane.
I'm saying I'm going to go either Raft River or Carey. That's what I would do. Those are I would put Oakley on top, and I would put Raft River, Carey right behind them. And that's not to say there's a huge gap between any of them, but I like the experience factor with Coach Evans, and then with Coach Kirkland's, the new staff there, Coach Sally, and on all of his players. The experience factor, I think, is big.
Yeah, is it John Saili? Is that how you say his name, Coach?
Saili, yeah.
Yep. Okay. I like him. He's an energetic guy. I got to interact with him very briefly, just exchanging emails. And he's a high energy guy. I like him a lot. What is a team that you've got your eye on outside of Oakley in this conference?
I like the tradition at Raft River. I don't know if there's enough depth there to get it done in a second place position. And so I would honestly pick Murtaugh. With Junior Benitez coming back and talking with Jensen a lot during track and field and just hearing him and seeing the number of players that they had, I think it's time for a Murtaugh breakthrough, honestly, and to finish one more game or two more games into the final season.
Yeah, that was such a crushing loss last year. I think it was week 3. Junior Benitez went down for the season. And Todd Jensen is a busy guy at Murtaugh. He coaches football, girls basketball, track. He's the AD. I mean, that guy is all over the place, always getting stuff done. So Murtaugh was fun. I got to go there for the first time last year for that first round playoff game against Lighthouse Christian. That was a game that Murtaugh probably feels like they should have won. They turned the ball over a couple of times. They had some uncharacteristic fumbles. And so for Lighthouse Christian, they were actually using their backup quarterback in that game. Case Van Leeuwen came in and played pretty well, and Lighthouse got the win. And that's the team I'm keeping an eye on, is Lighthouse Christian. They had a new coach last year, Jason Smith, who came up from Florida, and he was an 8-man coach down in Florida and was known for this wide open passing attack in 8-man football, which in Idaho we're not used to. We're used to teams running the ball and pounding between the guards. So he installed this spread offense. It worked pretty well. Justice Schrader was a great QB. Jack DeYoung, excellent wide receiver. They're both back. But now he's gone. He went back to Florida. So they've got their second coach in as many years, Logan Bosma. And I'm curious to see how much of that they keep and how much they go back to maybe a more traditional 8-man scheme. I think Lighthouse is going to be an interesting team to watch this year as well, Coach Kirkland.
Yes, they certainly will be with DeJong there and some speed and those younger kids. They have a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of potential that I think will shine through as they take the turf this season. So we'll see how that plays out.
And then, Valley and Glens Ferry at the end there. Both teams were pretty young last year. We'll see. They have a chance to punch their way up into the upper echelon of the conference. We'll see how they do. It's nice to have Valley back in the 8-man game after they had to go up to the 2A ranks for a little while there. So it's nice to have them back for sure. Let's move to the other league that had a lot of intrigue in the preseason, the White Pine League up north in District 2. Kamei is the defending champion. They got to the Final Four last year. They were picked number 1 in our preseason coaches poll. And then kind of like District 4, Will, I got answers all over the board on who was going to take second place. Officially, Prairie picked second, Logos third, Clearwater Valley 4th, Potlatch 5, Troy 6, Lapway 7, Genesee 8. I think any of those 7 teams outside of Genesee, because they don't have the numbers right now, they're going to be moving back down to 1A D2. It's going to be a tall order for them. But any of the other 7, why not?
It's fascinating because they all have their strengths. Prairie has the storied tradition, and they've got maybe the best running back in the one of the top individual running back in the conference in Trenton Lawrence. Then you go to Logos, Jack Driscoll. They're not afraid to throw it around, and they've got 35 kids on the team, so they've got numbers and depth, and they've got some speed. Lapway is always loaded with athletes. The thing that's going to be interesting for them is they've got a freshman quarterback this year who's played a couple of years of junior high ball. But, Coach, you can answer this better than anybody. It's a little different playing junior high ball on a Wednesday or Thursday night versus being under the lights on a Friday night, against a Prairie or a Kamei. And, Kamei, for me, I'll put them up there against any 1A Division I team in the state. I think Parker Whipple, I think he got maybe the best player in the conference, period. 2-way lineman. He had something like, 8 sacks and 15 tackles for losses last year as a junior. He was the conference player of the year as a junior. And then you've got an experienced quarterback coming back in David Clute. You got O'Kane and Weddle in the backfield. I think Kamei has a chance to be a really, really good team this year.
Yeah, Lane, David Clute is the quarterback for Kamei. He's a coach's kid. Nels Clute, the coach up there at Kamei. How tough are those guys to scheme against? Because they know the playbook in and out.
They'll just watch them on film. I've never played them, but they're tough dudes. Coached against them a little bit in the All-State game, a couple of those guys, and they're just tough guys up there. And they have some tradition. They know when to step it up for big games. I think, you see that in the playoffs last year against Butte. They just know when to step it up, and they have a good game plan, and they execute it really well. Their kids buy in, and they just kind of seem to keep things going over there. And Clute's going to be tough to handle there. His dad is the coach. They're going to have a lot of great connections, and he's going to lead that team really well because of that communication between him and his dad.
Yeah, setting up the schedule for this weekend. I keep forgetting to do this after we talk about a conference. In District 4, we've got some out-of-state opponents. Lighthouse is going to host Wells High School from Nevada. Oakley is going to host St. Joseph's Catholic School from Utah. You've got Rimrock at Glens Ferry, Murtaugh at Chalice, Grace at Carey, Raft River at Tri-Valley, which we already talked about, and then Butte County at Valley. Up in the White Pine League for week 1, some really interesting games. We talked about Lapwai going to host Timberline and Troy going to host Deary. Lakeside will host Logos. And then the game that we're going to bring to you on IdahoSports.com is Notice at Clearwater Valley. So we'll save our Clearwater Valley talk here for just a second. Logos is another team that has gotten a lot of buzz in the preseason. Jack Driscoll is back. They were a wide open passing attack. 3 years ago, Logos was experiencing football for the first time and went through some growing pains. And now they're like, yeah, we're here and we're ready. And
they've got almost everybody back from last year where they were a handful for a lot of teams. When you're able to spread things out and you're able to move the ball vertically the way they were able to move the ball, that's going to be tough for some teams to defend, because that's a big field without a lot of defenders. And Driscoll's a solid quarterback. He can run the ball pretty well too. So, you're going to have to maintain some discipline when you're rushing him, or else he's just going to step forward and run for 10 or 15 yards. So they're going to be a matchup problem for a lot of teams going forward this year. And I think it would be a mistake to overlook them. And I think that they're definitely going to be a strong team when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and then, Potlatch has strong linemen. Lapway's got Elias Year out. Troy's got some good players up front. This league is going to be so much fun to watch. Lane, I call the White Pine League the Big 12 because every game is like 60-50. I mean, the scoreboard operator, he needs a Mountain Dew or something before the game.
Yeah, he needs to be a gamer. He needs to practice and then get ready to take score for sure up there. There's a lot of points for sure.
So we talk about this a lot, Will and I do, about, a defense that gives up 28 points per game. It's actually not bad in 8-man football, right? What is the goal as a defense in terms of points allowed? Because, in the 8-man game, teams are going to score. It's just natural.
Well, I think a good number is it's average of 20 would be better, or 12 or 16 points a game. But sometimes that don't happen. Sometimes other teams have great players and they're just hard to stop, and they just make big plays. And it's happened to us with great teams, and they just seem to score a lot of points up there. They must play basketball after the game on Saturdays, maybe. I don't know.
It seems like every week, Brandon, we look at the scoreboard and we're like, did you see the final score of blank versus blank? There's always one like 80-64 or something like that almost every week, it seems like.
Yeah, and then what's funny is then during basketball season, with outside of Lapwai, which is historically great in basketball, all the basketball games are like 40-38, and it's the opposite. It's like low scoring.
If they're handing out helmet stickers for touchdowns, they better be really small, because there needs to be a lot of room on that helmet to put those on there.
Or they wear two helmets. They just switch back and forth once they get them full.
Sure, a whole poster board. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk about Clearwater Valley. We are going to be showcasing the Rams on Friday night on IdahoSports.com. Yours truly, I'm going to be there broadcasting this game. I'm really excited, as Notice will make the trip up from District 3. Notice has has basically controlled District 3 the last 3 years. Clearwater Valley finished second a year ago, lost to Kamei in a very tight game that basically decided the White Pine title. Alan Hutchins, the head football coach at Clearwater Valley and the athletic director, good friend of the program. He was the tournament director at the 1A state baseball tournament this year, and that's where I was broadcasting. And it was like May, and he was already lobbying me to, hey, you got to come broadcast this game. Notice in Clearwater Valley, this is going to be a great matchup. Will, it's exciting to see Notice taking on a tough opponent and making the trip up north after Clearwater Valley came down and played Notice last year.
Yeah, Clearwater came down here last year, and they've got some great players up there in Kuski. When you're talking about Bass Myers, if you're doing an all name team, a kid that plays for a high school that's right along the Clearwater River, and his name is Bass Myers. I don't know how you can leave him off an all name team, but he happens to be a hell of a football player too, and they've got good skill to go around him. Pickering, Schilling, they've got good players to go with him. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be a tough out. And that first game against Notice, that's going to be a really good test for them.
On the flip side of that, Lane, Notice comes in a little banged up. 2 key players that they were counting on this year. Ian Hill is going to be out for 6 or 7 weeks. Hopefully you get him back for maybe a game or 2 in the regular season and then a playoff run. And then another player they were counting on is out for the season. The name is escaping me.
Gunnar Campbell, the running back.
Thank you. Yep, Gunnar Campbell. And both of these guys were going to be running back, fullback types, and then linebackers. How devastating is that when you lose? It's really like losing 4 starters because they go both ways.
Yeah, that's tough, especially early season and some of your better players. Hopefully that doesn't take a bunch of wind out of their sails, the player sails, and they just take it in a different approach and just go forward and work to fill those positions. But it's tough. It's tough. You don't want to lose a good dude right off the bat or 2. That can be devastating in programs like that, especially after the number of great kids they graduated. But I think Coach Woodland will put some good things together. They'll rally and they'll still be the Notice Pirates.
Yeah, and so what do? You adapt. Coach Woodland taking his best wide receiver and a great speedster on the track. This lane, Grayson Benitez, and he's moving him to running back because, hey, we got to get our best athlete the ball. And so we'll put him in the backfield, see what he can do. I'm really excited to see how Benitez looks there in the backfield. So Notice is the favorite in the Western Idaho Conference. They were picked number 1 in our preseason poll. The rest of the poll went as follows: Rimrock 2, Idaho City 3, Wilder 4, and then the co-op of Greenleaf Friends, Gem State, and Centennial Baptist. They were picked 5th. Will, with these injuries to Notice, how much has the gap narrowed between the Pirates and Rimrock? Yeah,
significantly. I still think with a returning quarterback, an experienced returning quarterback in Benny Guevara and then Easton St. Germain up front, that their Notice still has tools, no question about it. They're still going to win games. They're still going to be a factor. But I think we're coming in with everyone healthy. I think Notice would have been a prohibitive favorite in a lot of people's eyes. For me, it's turned into, well, they'll be there. They'll be in the mix. They'll be a good team. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with. But I think Idaho City has a chance as well with some good players coming back. And I like to see the coaches recognizing Rimrock. I think that with Ronaldo Gomez, the quarterback, dual threat guy, really tremendous athlete, and some good players coming back there. I think that that's a team that, just because we don't talk about Rimrock a lot, they're kind of out there isolated outside of Mountain Home. They don't get a lot of press coverage. They don't, you don't necessarily see them a lot per se. I think that sometimes we don't really know what they have going on down there, but Coach Ward, I think, has a good group of kids where if they stay healthy, I'm not going to be surprised if they don't overtake Notice, if Notice is, if those injuries continue to be a problem in Notice.
Yeah, Gomez, not only a weapon at quarterback, but with his leg as well. Pretty good kicker. He was 3 for 5 on PATs last year, which we know how tough it is to make kicks in 8-man football. And then Lane, he even got to attempt a field goal in a non-conference game with Hawaii, Nevada. Last year, Ronaldo Gomez from Rimrock, he made a 47-yard field goal. Have you seen a kick that long in 8-man?
Just from Wilder back in the day. 2014, 15, those guys they had a kicker that could do some work from either side, either hash mark. He was really good, but not very often. That's a good one.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how much of a weapon is that when you've got a kicker like that?
Well, I'm sure it's won a few games, but I don't know what those are because you don't see it very often. But good for them. If you can kick, get it done with your leg. Get those 3 points.
Yeah. So
there was a playoff game, Brandon, a few years ago. It was in Wilder. Wilder was playing Potlatch, and Kyle Dalsolio, the head coach at Wilder, had a kid, and it might be this same kid that you're talking about, Coach. Came out there in the first half and banged home about a 30-yard field goal, and it made the score at the time. I think it made the score something like 9-6, and you don't think much of it then until Wilder punches in another touchdown later. Well, now it's a 2-score game. So instead of it being 12-6, it's 15-6, and it completely changed what Potlatch had to do. And as a result, it took Potlatch out of their game a little bit, and Wilder was able to win the game.
Yeah, that's tough for sure. So Rimrock narrowly missed out on that second playoff spot. Idaho City got it last year, and then that's a team you saw right away in the playoffs, Lane, Idaho City. The story surrounding this conference, and it will continue to be the story until a team actually breaks through in the playoffs, is on a statewide level, can somebody from District 3 get a win? Notice, despite all their success, they've gone 0-3 the last 3 postseasons. Idaho City was bounced right away by your squad. How tough is that when you're carrying the flag, not just for your team, but for your conference that just hasn't gotten a win at the state level in such a long time?
You can take pride in winning your conference, and I think that's where it begins for programs like that. And then you just give it your best from there on in that first round or in the play-in game, wherever it stands. And you just gotta keep swinging, go to bat, and maybe one of these years they'll get that win and move to the next level.
It's got to happen at some point, right? I mean, just mathematically, at some point, somebody in District 3 is going to have a good enough team to go punch somebody in the mouth, right?
Right. And sometimes a kid will move into your school and take you there. Oh, you can hope for that.
Yeah,
definitely. You can hope Santa comes a couple months early, drops a player in your lap for sure. Okay, let's wrap up with first the schedule of games for District 3. Idaho City is traveling to Cascade. We talked about Notice going to Clearwater Valley. And then you've also got Rimrock traveling to Glens Ferry. And then we'll wrap up with the High Desert Conference. This is District 5 and 6 over in East Idaho. Grace got all the way to the 1A D1 championship game last year. They actually got a game under their belts. They beat El Capitan, Arizona. I know nothing about this school, but they won 34-16. So the Grizzlies are 1-0. Butte County is always tough, and Chalice is on their own this year. That's how the preseason poll went. It was actually Butte County picked first, Grace picked second, and then Chalice picked third. Well, we talk about it. Butte County's always got one of the biggest sidelines. They've got bigger sidelines than like some 11-man teams.
Oh, yeah. There are 3A and 4A teams that would kill for the depth that Sam Thorngren has there. And they'd probably kill for the running backs that he seems to have year in and year out, too. I don't know where he finds them, but he always seems to have one big old workhorse who, if you need to give him the ball 30 times, he's going to give you 150 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And, I expect them to be right near the front of the line again this year. I expect them to be a good team once again.
Yeah, Lane, what did you get to watch Grace much last year? I mean, they were on the opposite side of the bracket as you guys in the playoffs, but they obviously played in the championship.
Well, we played in that first game and got to experience that with 7 turnovers. But
I wasn't going to bring that one up,
Brandon.
I wasn't going to go there, but
yeah, sorry, but we saw them. We saw a lot of them on offense or defense, I should say. But anyway, watching them on huddle, throughout the year, they got better. They lost a kid early on. I think the Kimball kid it was, but he's back this year. Grace is tough. They get it done, and they've started early. I think they'll be really prepared for this season. They're coming to Carey tomorrow night, and we'll see what they bring there. So, good tradition there that they've got going on in the 8-man game, and you get hungrier once you've reached that final game.
Yeah, are you going to go watch that game tomorrow night, Lane?
Yeah, I'm calling it from the Crow's Nest tomorrow night, so that should be interesting.
Okay, this is a good warm-up for you then. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on Grace, because they are a team that is notoriously difficult to glean anything from unless you are playing them or you go with your own two eyes, because a lot of teams will have film out there on the internet that I can go look at, and there's like nothing. And there's also, we like to highlight individual players that have had good performances, and from Grace we always get, it was just a good team win. No notable individuals, just a good team win. It makes our job difficult at times, Will, as we're trying to, the reason we do this Prepcast, and this was how I wanted to end the show, was just a conversation at large about information and getting, I would say 95% of the coaches we work with are awesome. We ask questions, they get back to us. We ask questions about their athletes, their kids, they get back to us. That's the reason we're doing it, is to put the spotlight on these student athletes in the great state of Idaho. We're not sitting here talking because we like to hear ourselves talk. We're doing it for all of our 8-man athletes. And when you get certain teams or coaches that aren't cooperative, it makes our jobs difficult.
Yeah, the Idaho 8-man Twitter account, which I started a few years ago, it started in and Coach Kirkland, you can probably talk a little bit down in Twin Falls, watching the way that the Times newspaper has had their resources restricted, and the Lewiston Tribune doesn't have the same amount of resources that they used to have. The Idaho State Journal over in Pocatello, the Idaho Statesman here in Boise. The sports reporters in the state, they want to go to these games, but they're very limited in what they can do and where they can be and stuff that they can do. So they rely on coaches and on people like Idaho Sports and whatnot to learn more about these teams. And all we want to do is tell good stories. You know what I mean? We're not trying to tip anybody off. We're not trying to give anybody a competitive advantage over anybody else. We just want to tell good stories and make sure that kids in small communities across Idaho who may not ever have another chance to be in the spotlight get their moment in the sun. And that's my goal. That's the entire purpose in what I do here, is to make sure that, people might not know who Porter Whipple is outside of the White Pine Conference or White Pine League, if not for places like Idaho Sports. And as it is, he's one of the best football players in the state of Idaho, and we may not know anything about him if not for, the Lewiston Tribune or the KLEW TV or something like that. So that's my dog in the fight on this, is I want the kids to get the attention and the recognition, and the communities to get the attention and the recognition that they deserve.
Right. Who doesn't want to hear their name on a Prepcast or a broadcast, or see their picture in the paper, or their names in the paper with a story to go along with that? And it has been a struggle with newspapers. The Times News has been restricted and kind of dropped that. And it's kind of sad because people love to read about it. We have every town's got a lot of old folks that read the paper still, and they want to see that report there, and it's not there. But it does, I think, become the responsibility of coaches to call that stuff in, to be proactive, to call whoever the sports editors are, and to get them that information, and to respond to you guys and get them that information to Idaho Sports and get it put out there so that recognition can take place. That's important for programs, important for kids, and important for parents to be able to see. And I think what you guys are doing is awesome. And people can refer to that and gain those clips and send them on to family across the nation.
Yeah. So as we go through the season, we're going to hear lots of good feedback from coaches and athletes. And if we're not talking about your team much, there's probably a reason for that, because we don't cover just the winning teams. We highlight the standouts from all the teams across the state. And so that goes hand in hand, though. We're only 3 people, right? We can literally only be at 3 games a week. And so we do rely on that information, and we just hope we get good cooperation from everybody as the season goes along. But guys, it is the opening really the opening weekend of 8-man football. Just about everybody's going to be in action. I'm so excited, Lane. Do you have any start of the season rituals as a coach that you're now going to have to do as a civilian?
Yeah, I'm going to go to sleep at night. How about that? Let's just start right there. I already started, so it's comfortable.
That's great. Will, are you just going to be, are you going to go to any games this week? You just going to be tuned in on IdahoSports.com? What's your plan?
Well, I live in Parma, and Parma plays their first game of the season tomorrow night at home against Coal Valley Christian. So you might see me wandering over there. I also coach baseball here, so a handful of my baseball players also play football. So I like to go over and support them in some of the other things that they do. So wouldn't be surprised if I wound up going over there to watch a game tomorrow night.
Cool. And I, of course, will be in Kuski for Clearwater Valley and Notice, one of 2 8-man games we've got for you tomorrow night on IdahoSports.com, along with Council at Kendrick. So, Lane, thanks
Pacific
again.
Time zone, I'll have a chance to get home in time to maybe watch the second half of those games.
Yes, it'll be 7 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Mountain. So, yeah, everybody else around the state could probably catch the second half of what should be 2 really fun contests. Lane, thanks again for coming on and doing this and being a fresh voice on the 8-man Prepcast. I'm really excited to have you on board this season.
You're welcome. It's a privilege. Thank you, fellas.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, to the Idaho 8-man Prepcast. We'll be back again. We're probably going to record every Thursday night, and we'll have it for you first thing Friday morning to get you ready for game day. So be on the lookout for that and subscribe this podcast wherever you subscribe. For Will Hoenike and Coach Lane Kirkland, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning in to the Idaho 8-man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.